Most reading in a high school English class happens with the ending already written. A student reads a passage, flips to the back of the book, and searches for a single predetermined answer to bubble in on a test. But what happens when the text is a living, building document? In a new simulation called The Client, the student is no longer a passive reader. They step into a public defender's office as an investigator paralegal, where a senior attorney drops a heavy manila case file on their desk. The file details a specific legal conflict, State versus Okafor. A 19-year-old is charged with armed robbery, staring down a 12-year prison sentence. The entire prosecution relies almost exclusively on the testimony of a single eyewitness. Inside the simulation, there is a golden rule. The case file is the case. There is no outside textbook to consult. The outcome depends entirely on how well a ninth grader can read the provided documents, because their ability to parse that text is the only defense this teenager has. The simulation does not provide the whole story at once. Evidence drips in over 14 chronological days, beginning with an initial police report filed by a Detective Voss. This daily cascade introduces students to a crucial, abstract skill known as information discernment. They learn to identify the exact difference between what a legal document claims it says and what it factually establishes as true. They look closely at vague phrasing, like an officer writing that Okafor was developed as a suspect, and ask what actual evidence supports that leap. A detective writing a report is an authority figure constructing a narrative. Students learn they must actively interrogate that initial framing to separate the hard facts from the author's assumptions. Real-world reading requires treating every text as a constructed argument that demands independent verification, rather than an objective truth to be accepted without question. As the file grows, witnesses emerge. The students meet Esther Mensa, a highly polished and absolutely certain eyewitness. Then they meet Coach Reina, a hesitant, messy alibi provider. A reader naturally wants to trust the polished presentation over the messy reality. By day 4, students almost always fall for the witness who sounds right, letting confidence outweigh accuracy. This is a deliberate discovery-first model. The curriculum lets students make flawed assumptions based on internal biases. The simulation waits until day 13 to introduce terms like the halo effect, giving them the exact psychological label to maim the trap they survived. Experiencing a cognitive bias firsthand builds a visceral defense against manipulative texts. Memorizing a list of terms from a psychology textbook cannot replicate that reflex. Fast forward to the climax on day 9. This interpretive inflection day is triggered by the sudden arrival of a plea offer from the prosecution. The student is cornered into an impossible choice. They can accept a guaranteed 4 years in prison or risk a 12-year sentence by rejecting the plea and taking the case to trial. At this exact moment, they must write a binding recommendation to the senior attorney, relying entirely on the incomplete evidence available in the file. The assignment requires strict discipline. The student must explicitly steelman the opposing argument, proving they understand the prosecution's strongest points, while pinpointing the specific questions in the case file that remain entirely unresolvable. The simulation does not grade them on whether they guess the correct verdict. It evaluates the structural integrity and quality of their reasoning. It proves that navigating uncertainty with pure logic is the critical skill. If you teach English language arts or direct a curriculum, managing a complex legal simulation might seem daunting, but you do not need a law degree to teach this. A comprehensive teacher guide, detailed pacing cards, and answer keys manage the heavy lifting. Meanwhile, the daily investigative tasks naturally align with Common Core ELA standards for argument writing, rhetorical analysis, and precise evidence citation. The true payoff arrives on day 11 with a real-world transfer exercise. The student takes the same analytical skills used to dissect a legal document and applies them directly to a standard newspaper article. This exercise connects the two, showing how the precise reading and critical thinking forged in the simulated courtroom apply to the information they consume outside of it. Reading must be taught as an act of defense. It requires knowing exactly when a text is trying to frame you. Bring the client into your 9th grade classroom. Teach them how to read the world and explore the simulation at patiencelearning.com.